And so now we will have Kit Prendergast, who is a bee ecologist, and she will be presenting on her title called An Enduring Aesthetic Appreciation of Bees in Art and Culture Through the Ages.
And Kit joins us from Australia, where it's really early in the morning tomorrow in the future.
Yeah. All right, good morning, people. I am Dr. Kit, and I'm going to be presenting to you about, just getting it up. I have so many tabs open, I'm sure you can all relate, about an enduring aesthetic appreciation of bees in art and culture through the ages. And this is a bit of a summary of a paper that I published with an amazing team of other bee scientists, as well as music academics, and they're all over the world. So you can see their names below. Check them out on Twitter as well. And so it was a great collaboration where we bring together all our expertise to look at how bees have been depicted in art throughout history and what that sort of aesthetic appreciation stemmed from. So that's our paper, Bee Representations in Human Art and Culture Throughout the Ages. And we wanted to know, today bees are ubiquitous. I'm not going to say that word, actually, I can't pronounce it, everywhere. And, they're making headlines across the world about, honeybee declines, even though they're not threatened, but also other pollinator declines, which has been touched on a lot in this conference. But is this fascination with bees something that's fairly recent, stemming from the pollination crisis, or have we had a long-standing appreciation of bees? And so in this paper, we used a bioaesthetics approach to look at how humans develop aesthetic appreciation and our sort of innate sort of cognitive biases and how aesthetic appreciation develops in the context of bees and art. So we found that indeed humans have loved bees for thousands of years, and for something to be depicted in art, especially in earlier times when humans had to survive and make sure that they spent enough time foraging for food, art, to be depicted in art, it meant it had to have a really important place in humans' lives. And so the first depictions were in Spain 8,000 years ago. So that's, we've had a long history with bees. In Australia, which is where I'm from, the First Nations people, the Aboriginal tribes, they had a close association with what are called sugar bag bees. These are the Meliponini. We've got 11 described species, and they use the sugar bag for food, the ceremin on didgeridoos, and the first evidence of this association was wax in rock art in 4,000 years ago. There's also Dreamtime stories involving the sugar bag bees. And so they were really important to the First Nations people. Moving, across the world, ancient Egypt, there were bee carvings of their Apis species, which is Apis cerana, and they actually managed the bees for honey and pollination. It was really important because the hieroglyph for the title of king included a bee. The earliest known insect jewelry was also from Egypt, and we start to see honeybees being symbolized as royalty, health, and wealth. They've been depicted on ancient Greek coins and in the imperial coat of arms of Napoleon. Looking at the Americas, so they also have the Melpomene bees, and these have been super important to the South American civilizations, such as the Mayans. A particular species has been really important, and they believed it was a gift from the gods, so it's a sacred animal to them. And it's been depicted on the longest surviving codex. And they've been managing these bees again for millennia. And they also recognize them in songs and in other art forms. They even had a god, and I'm not going to try and pronounce the name, but it was also recently reintroduced to virtual online games. So we can see that this association with bees and the god has, been reincarnated essentially. So clearly bees were so important to their culture if they had bees as a god. In China, their representation of bees, even though China has like the longest, ongoing history of sort of artwork and writing, bees were only depicted fairly recently in terms of their duration of art forms, because the honeybee in China was more of something to be feared and mainly associated with the sting. But then after the Tang Dynasty, beekeeping became more prominent, and honey was recognized for its healing and therapeutic properties and became part of Chinese medicine. And so only then did honeybees start to be depicted in paintings and music. And what's interesting is they also started depicting other types of bees, including bombus, and China has the highest diversity of bombus in the world. So bees have also inspired music, and many people know of the hum of a bee, and that has even been like transcribed, attempted to anyway early on by the father of English beekeeping. And as beekeeping rose in popularity in the 19th century, we start to see bees being more and more represented in music. And of course, one of the most, famous pieces of orchestral music is The Flight of the Bumblebee. And we also have today bees featured in so many more recent pop songs, and I'm sure many of you will know Professor Lars Chitka. He's done like the seminal work on honeybee cognition and communication, as well as that of other bees. But he's not just a scientist, he's also a performer and a musician, and he's got his own band, the Killer Bee Queens. Bees have also inspired architecture throughout history. So in Scotland, there's these houses or skeps that represent the skeps of beehives. And again, we see this ongoing connection throughout history. These have been replicated in Star Wars. There's also other examples of amazing architecture, such as the honeycomb house and the geodesic dome typology, which is popularized by Buckminster Fuller. And it involves many components, not just the structure of it, but also the inspiration of, we all know about, I don't know if anyone's seen the meme, but how structurally perfect the hexagons are in the honeybee comb. We've also seen sort of multimedia involving architecture. So the hive, this is an amazing, massive structure of the hexagons. It also involves a living bee colony, and their activity is measured and it lights up in relation to their activity. So a very amazing collaboration between scientists, architects, technicians, and musicians as well. And we also are starting to see bees as collaborators in art. So as you can see from the hive, the bees are collaborating with the art And Sarah Peebles has some amazing artworks. Definitely check those out, where you've got sensory bee cabinets, and they're all about, working with bees in a natural way and creating some art with them. There's also been a series of projects under the Melliferopolis project. These have been all on the screens too, and how they're represented varies quite a bit. As you know, before, there's sort of been a shift in how we represent bees. Earlier representations was more focusing on that fear aspect, and there's still some of that, for example, in Black Mirror, but that aspect of fear, I'm sure bees feature in a lot of like terrible B-grade horror movies as well. When it comes to children's movies and TV shows and media, the bees, especially of late, are represented in a more positive way as our friends. Bee Movie, even though it's terrible, it's become a very big source of memes, and obviously part of our cultural canon. There's also, of course, documentaries in recent times focusing on bees, usually honeybees, about the vanishing of bees and how important they are to society and pollination and the pollination crisis. Bees have also become part of our virtual arts. So if you grew up in the 90s, like I did, Pokemon was massive, and it's still one of the most popular virtual games of all time. And it includes various bee-type Pokemon, such as Beedrill, which looks more like a wasp, but it's got bee in the name. And then Combi and Vespiquen, and they even like take on the biology essentially. So Combis, if they're female, they can, they look after their queen and they collect honey. And there's also the sort of like evolution there. Minecraft is also massively popular and the most profitable video game. And they collaborated with WWF to add bees, again, to raise awareness about the plight of bees. Of course, it's honeybees, but it's clear that bees are a massive part of our culture and society today. So that was our paper. And we covered so much throughout the history of bees in art and culture, across countries, across time. But honeybees have been very, very much the focus throughout history, and especially in more traditional art. But what about today? Are we starting to see a shift away from the honeybee, as hopefully most of us are starting to raise awareness about our other 20,000 species of bees? And what do bees represent to us today in the 21st century? So this is a paper that I'm working on at the moment, looking at bees, especially the living representations. So bees on our bodies, how we symbolize bees in tattoos, in performative arts, in live installations, in fashion, in circus. What do these symbolize to us? So if you have any ideas about that or would like to collaborate, or any funding ideas, please get in touch. So this is just in the works. But from our previous paper, it was very much focused on a bioaesthetic approach and bees throughout history, and there was so much more that we had to leave out. And so I'm hoping to incorporate those other aspects of bees in contemporary society into this next paper, especially how we live bees, essentially. So in our paper, we demonstrated that there is clearly a striking human-bee relationship through our artistical and cultural evidence, and extends back thousands of years and has continued to the present day. Now, originally, this aesthetic appreciation was due to our association with bees with honey. Honey has been like a major important delicacy and source of nutrition, especially back during hunter-gatherer days. and today it's still a delicacy. Like, we've evolved to love sweet things. And so that sort of appreciation of honeybees stemmed from that. But now we're starting to see a shift in how we represent bees in art. They've evolved to represent royalty in various, civilizations, and a source of inspiration for music, a source of inspiration for architecture. And now they're very much represented as a sort of environmental theme, and, to depict the state of the planet and raise awareness about how the planet isn't doing so well, and what we might be able to do to conserve these species, some of which are really important for us, some of which aren't, but are still important components of biodiversity. So again, thank you to my co-authors for this paper. Thank you to you, the audience. And if you want to have a summary of the actual publication, that's also on my YouTube channel, The Bee Baby. So thank you all. And if you have any questions.
Cool, thank you, Kit. So it's 5 o'clock, so we are actually going to just move on to the last speaker of the day. But I'm sure if anyone has questions, you guys can just DM. I think you're on Twitter, so they could probably also contact you there. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks.